And now, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Wayland Library virtually. Tonight, we are excited to have a virtual author panel of poetry, flash fiction, and other writing with Peter Crowley, Linda Werbner, and Timothy Gager. I'm going to introduce each of our authors, and then I think Pete's going to start us off with a reading, and we're lucky tonight to be accompanied by Dan Morse on guitar with Pete. So they'll each read for about 15 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. So if everybody who's not reading could stay muted, that would be helpful. And here we go. So Peter F. Crowley is a prolific author of short fiction, op-eds, poetry, and academic essays. In 2020, his poetry book, Those Who Hold Up the Earth, received impressive reviews from Kirkus, the Bangladeshi New Age, and from 2 local Boston area newspapers. His work shines a light on the forgotten people of the world, from pizza makers in the US to Bangladeshi rickshaw drivers to middle-aged residents of Pendik, Turkey, who are willing to help out strangers. Peter's most recent books, That Night and Other Stories and Empire's End, were published in 2023. His writing can also be found in Middle East Monitor, Znet, 34th Parallel, Pif Magazine, among others. So I'm just going to make sure everybody else is muted. Hang on one second. Okay, there we go. And I'll move on to Linda. Linda Werbner is a Salem-based writer who works as a therapist. When she's not sitting with clients and practicing tikkun olam, which is healing the world, she enjoys performing at local spoken word open mics, making quilts for loved ones, cooking eggplant parm, eating popcorn, and watching Columbo with her partner, and playing old-time banjo. Her work has appeared in Quail Bell Magazine and Global Poemic, an online literary journal. Timothy Gager is the best-selling author of 18 books of fiction and poetry, including his 3rd novel, Joe the Salamander. He hosted the successful Dyer Literary Series in Cambridge from 2001 to 2018 and started a weekly virtual series in 2020. He has over 1,000 works of fiction and poetry published, 18 of which were nominated for the Pushcart Prize. And my phone's ringing, sorry about that. His work has also been nominated for Massachusetts Book Award, the Best of the Web, the Best Small Fictions Anthology, and has been read on NPR. In 2023, Big Table Publishing published an anthology of 20 years of his selected works, with over 150 pages of new material in The Best of Timothy Gager. Timothy is the former fiction editor of the Wilderness House Literary Review and the founding co-editor of the Heat City Literary Review. He lives in Dedham and is employed as a social worker. Thank you all for being here. This is very exciting. And now I will hand over the stage to Peter Crowley and Dan Morse.
Sure. Thank you, Courtney. And thanks, Tim and Linda, for joining. So I've had a couple of books published last month. One's Empire's End, a poetry book, and the other one's That Night and Other Stories, short story book. And I'm going to be reading from both of these today. And Dan will join me for a handful of poems. The first one is There Has to Be a Better Way to Die. And this one is written after someone I know who's pretty close to passed away after a long battle with cancer. Silver cells abound in glistening field. The body turns, a whooping crane listens. Fish beneath the shadowed surface dart in seizure spasms. The crane's beak jabs into the water, lacerating gills. Hairless, mouth ajar, dark circles underneath the eyes, stomach in rebellion, T-cells on strike. There has to be a better way to die. Listless, pallor, eyes fluttering, hallucinating, blind, cancer in recession, doesn't matter anymore. There has to be a better way to die. Feeding tubes, morphine, high fever, delirium, tired like Vishnu, imbibing all the world's suffering. There has to be a better way to die. This one is called Fear. An oblique opera has conditioned fear. The second Ypres gas mask will protect you from dust. Mad has been set loose upon open bottles and cars, neglecting predatory lending and resultant foreclosure. Weather gods elicit nightly apocalypses. Inner cities are the hell you're thankful you don't live there. One thing is sure, the many-headed hydra will keep you suffocating in purple days where you need to watch by to ward off the scathing elements. And to listen to the hydra nightly, amygdala gone wild, and the rest of the brain as empty as a winter Cape Cottage. This one's a little piece of a short story called Initials. Starts out a little autobiographical. The house where I was born or grew up in, someone killed himself in the basement. The autobiographical nature of it stops there. So the main character, Christopher Francis Flaherty, moved out, and there are some initials in the basement now, according to the latest residents, and also they're hearing noises from the basement. So they have contacted him, and this is where I'll start up. It was a while before I heard from them again. The weather was warm, air conditioners were humming. It was early July. They asked to meet at a Starbucks near their house. When I met them, they seemed visibly distraught. The woman's once tanned skin was pallor, and the man seemed to have lost a substantial amount of weight. The whites of his serious eyes shone out in panic from his gaunt face. They cut right to the chase. After getting coffees, Jill alleged, "Mr. Flaherty, there's something you're not telling us." "What do you mean? I was kind enough to divulge much of my past to each of you, perfect strangers, back in February. Honestly, I don't know what you two are after." They exchanged glances. Jill began to speak, but her husband put up his hand. In a slow, deliberate tone, as if premeditated, he said, "Mr. Flaherty, we've been completely forthcoming with you about our home, our problems with the basement, and the mysterious initials. We looked up the municipal records online, then went to City Hall to confirm. And even then, reached out to the remaining relatives of..." "Don't act like you don't know," Jill interrupted in a shrill voice. "You're the bastard who's keeping us awake at night." Anger seethed in her eyes, and her husband tried to calm her. "Basically, the gig is up," the man said. "CFF is Christopher Francis Flaherty, the name of the young man who killed himself in 1982. That is you." And now I'd like to welcome Dan Morse for some poetry and guitar. This is from my first book called Time is Recurrence and Vanishing. I'm just adjusting settings. Let's make sure it's on. Cool. Effervescence, epoxy, sits on tawdry shelves in void environs of absence. With a click of the hills, fairies emerge from Yeats's brain, dwelling in Northwest Ireland's coastal myths, 'neath skies that turn from sun-gazing field of sheep meadow to abrupt maelstrom rain that soon again yield azure. The fairies perform a celly dance around the sleeper's head. The sleeper, head resting on recurrent pillow, dreams of imbibing liquid coal from a tornado-shaped funnel. Meanwhile, the dead, in their closed-eye deep soil stare, provide feed for beetles and maggots, while the hydroxyapatite dust fuels soil fecundity. The amorphous fairies leap from hillside to hillside, yielding Pharaoh and the dead's moonshadow wake. In turn, Pharaoh is raised by keepers of the land, the agriculturalists, who rear them to a ripe age until they're slaughtered and eaten. The night following the feast, farmers sit up all night with family and friends, recounting stories of sea-dipped pasts where Coleridge's albatross lingers still, burdened by the weight of time, not released, until narrative memory fades into the dark and empty evening of the passing waves of generations. This one is called Guillotine. It's from Empire Zen, my new book. Guillotine is a fine instrument. Kept the populace and their rulers in check. Its sharp blade, an improvement upon the sword, and dropping mechanically onto the victim's neck. In the contorted countenance, head roll ensured a stomach pit conflagration. It'd be fine to see this atavistic instrument reunited in time. For there are many herds of swine waving hooves and befuddled stammer that cause steel rain to fall on people's brow. As the swine prance around their gate, they peer out, hurling cast iron spear on those who do not kneel, while the hillsides are red with blood. It would be fine if those who deliver mass death in spear-studded talking point knew of Louis XVI and his palace's demise, to know that their ignorance will not be rewarded by stock option or re-election, but that a masked man will force them to kneel with head resting on wooden lunette. And when the shimmering blade brusquely falls, divorce their head from body and ruler from ruled. This one is Train This Machine to Replace You. Kind of about everyone whose job is getting taken away by artificial intelligence, including cashiers, people in service industry, or even office workers. We bring you up to bring you down. So pyramids can be built in your body, drug into the Nile. $200,000 data points a day you glean to trainless, bloodless orifice, with data architects worshipped and the rest shat on. We bring you up to bring you down. Was it ever really up? Or more like the terminally ill? in catatonic coma and kept alive for religious reasons. In religion, not God, but prophet's cold, condescending glare. We bring you up to bring you down. The Nile's crocodiles await, sawtooth mulls ajar, and after mangled in post-layoff gloom, corporate health insurance lost, you go to the ER and hospital debts amount, court cases pile up but the money's gone. We bring you up to bring you down. At some point, bank accounts dwindle, and eventually you're unemployable. So keep at it, training this cloud behemoth. Stand in awe at human redundancy. For the figure at your desk will soon recede into a phantom. Winds of change. Human being, once an eyeglass lens, and later a euphoric carrier pigeon. Once an isolated tundra, and later the life of an Eid party. Once a roaming ghost lost in northeast deciduous forests, and later a town councillor claiming stolen election. Once a lioness stalking giraffes, and later a mouse stuck in elephant's dung. Once lady slipper roots seeking underground stream, and later a towering redwood's branches. Once a daffodil hosting bees' nectar, and later a marsupial pocketing convenience store goods and creeping out the door. Once a crane pecking at scurrying crab, and later the Burj Khalifa looking out from top floor. Once a miser with buried gold deep in rainforest, and later a social worker counseling the needy. Once a fortress sending cannon fire to all who approach, and later a neighbor rescuing an infant crawling across the street. Once a gymnast who could perform 8 consecutive balance beam backflips, and later a 50-year-old MS patient in wheelchair. Once a banker who enjoys small talk with customers, and later a refugee on small, overcrowded Mediterranean boat. Once a child playing with stuffed donkey, and later, after earthquake, pummeled home and crushed family. A silent woman staring, glassy-eyed out window. Human being, like lioness, lady slipper, elephant, and redwood. You will do what you need to survive. I'm just going to read one more quick flash fiction and then. This is called Dump. And this couple is at a restaurant and the conversation is teetering a little bit. And Daryl, the guy's still eating, and Sharon, I'll start right here. Sharon got up and went to the bathroom. Thick cigarette smoke pervaded the air. The stall she went into had an empty Heineken bottle floating in the toilet. Figure, she thought. He always likes divey places. Maybe that was cool when you're 21, but not when you're 35. When she returned, Daryl was lying on the floor underneath their table, with his head popping out at the end. The plate of pulled pork sandwich, of which there was a quarter remaining, was on his stomach. She rested her feet on his ribs as she sat down, and it felt particularly comfortable. The White Stripes song, Stop Breaking Down, came into her head. She tapped out the beat with her heeled shoes. I think I got it. That's Green Day's Basket Case, right? No. What is it then? Why does it matter? Daryl peered up at her from the floor, trying to make eye contact, and asked, don't you love me anymore? Did we ever say we loved each other? Yeah, we both did, remember? We were in Brooklyn at your favorite restaurant in the whole world. Sharon thought back to a year ago, 4 months after they had met. They were seated outside at a narrow row of tables next to a dozen-story brick building. It was an Indo-Chinese vegan place. She ordered an amazing gobi Manchurian appetizer. He just sat there with a coffee, saying that he wasn't hungry. He looked into her eyes and said those words. When she replied in kind, his hazel eyes beamed. That was weird. I thought I loved you then, but did I? Maybe. Maybe I was just horny and lonely. Definitely don't love you now. Why do we always have to talk about these kind of things? Why do we have to talk at all? I don't know. I guess it's nice to reminisce about the good times we had together. Sharon looked straight across the table to where Daryl had been sitting earlier and said, I've been thinking. We've been together for almost a year and a half now. Don't you think it's time to give ourselves a little space and maybe see other people? You mean like an open relationship? No, I just mean us not seeing each other anymore ever. Daryl stopped chewing and looked up at the ceiling fan, which finally whirred on. I don't think that's something we need to do. I do, Sharon said, shoving her heels deep into his side. She pushed herself out from the booth. She stood up, looked down at him as he masticated on a mouthful of pulled pork and said, I'm dumping you, Daryl. Thanks.
Thanks, Pete. Now we'll hear from Linda. You're muted, honey. There we go.
Oh, hi.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Pete. That was really great. I love how you delivered the stories and the poems, and it's really great to be here again. I apologize, my voice is a little shot. I've been sick, so. Anyways, I'm just going to read 3 poems. This first poem is called Loneliness, and I wrote it after I read the Surgeon General Vivek Murthy's book. He talked about loneliness as a public health crisis, you know, in these sort of post-pandemic times. And he relayed this anecdote about his own experience of loneliness. So that's what this poem is about. The 12-year-old future Surgeon General of the United States walks into the noisy cafeteria of Roberts Junior High School beneath a cloud of dread and shame. He is new to the city, to the school, and he has no friends. Eyes cast downward, he walks with his tray, a sad gathering of chicken nuggets and pale, defeated broccoli. To sit by the window, pretending he is perfectly content to be alone. Today, I am reading the book that this boy will write in 25 years. A book about loneliness and how it is bad for your health. Worse than high fructose corn syrup, cigarettes, and fentanyl. This morning, I walked past an unhoused woman living behind a brick building on Canal Street, cocooned in her blue sleeping bag, flanked by shopping carts piled high, with her worldly possessions. I think about this woman sleeping on the street on a Sunday morning in November. And I think about my mother on Ellison 22, the wire and tubes, the machines with their staccato electronic whispers and sighs. Oh, mother, your garland hands, your gnarled hands once nourished and comforted me when I was a helpless, ugly bag of mostly water. Now you lie alone in a bed on the top floor of Mass General. The waxing moon shines down on you, and an indifferent nurse named Simone drifts in and out to check your vitals. Oh world, oh lonely world, oh lonely people in this world, oh moon, only moon, give us sanctuary, give us succor, give us fellowship. And this is another poem about my mother. She's living in a we call it a skilled nursing facility, but it's a nursing home. It's a good one. She's well, but she's living in a nursing home. And you know, when I visit her, every time I see her, every minute is precious. So and time feels like an emotion. So this poem is called Time is an Emotion. In this place, time is an emotion. In this room, time is not wasted. It is cherished and anticipated. Here, clocks are vestigial, meaningless machines. Here, time is nonlinear. Here, time is alive. Mother, your universe is 125 square feet. This room is your harbor. Your next port is eternity. We know the latitude and longitude of our hearts. Mother, not too long ago, we were rich with time. Our faces were smooth. Our steps were strong and decisive. If we didn't talk to one another for a week or even a month, it wasn't a problem. No feelings were hurt. No assumptions were made. Now, when we sit together, I am full of questions, hungry for details. Now, your voice is full of ashes, and I imprint your every word and gesture into the rich, dark soil of memory. Time is an emotion like no other in the heart's lexicon. And this last poem is called Lifted. I broke my arm earlier last year, and I was taking a lift to and from physical therapy. And all of my Lyft drivers were just these wonderful, really kind men from all different countries, and they were working hard, and they told me about their lives. And this is just, you know, a poem of gratitude, you know, because we're facing Thanksgiving. So this is a poem that I wrote, kind of a Valentine to those wonderful, hardworking, undercompensated people who drive for Lyft and Uber. Are you Linda? Are you Jesus? Tentative existential greetings exchanged. I climb into his champagne-colored RAV4, a chalky smear of bird crap tattooed on the window. I have read his profile. He is a five-star, top-rated driver. The cab smells of synthetic coconut. A tiny Dominican flag trimmed with gold braids dangles from the rearview mirror. Reggaeton rhythms pulse softly. A pale, no longer iced coffee tucked in the console. Off we go. Today, the Sabbath, Jesus is my shepherd, my Sherpa, my keeper. Every day, this app summons a new chauffeur from a country I have never been to bring me to therapy. Monday was Elvis from Honduras in a mint green Honda Camry. Tuesday was Aaron from Albania in a blue Toyota. Wednesday was Chakwanoso. My name means God is always near, in a white BMW. Thursday was Giovanni from Brazil in a black Highlander. I hear bachata, Brazilian heavy metal, forró. They tell me the name of their city, village, island. We talk about inflation, the cost of gasoline, a child's graduation. The restaurant they will open one day, how to say thank you in Urdu, Igbo, Albanian. The men worry about money. They have 3 jobs. They are scrambling, hustling backwards. I feel for these homers of the lonely American highway, rocketing through this tangled, moneyed galaxy, pursued by AI bots, sending warnings, demands to their homes that will be translated by their 9-year-old sons. The warnings and demands fill them with dread and rob them of sleep, haunted by visions of debt and hunger, humiliating ghosts of failure. I have a message for you, Jesus, Elvis, Aaron, Chakwanoso, Giovanni, Walt Whitman, the patron saint of new Americans, of boundless hope and communion, is riding shotgun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Linda. And now we'll turn it over to Timothy.
Hi, thank you very much, Courtney, and great hearing you, Linda, and Peter. Thank you for inviting me to this reading. So I've decided to kind of freestyle it since the Christmas promotional period starts in about September every year. I figure we're getting late to the game, so I'm gonna. I had a little chat with Linda earlier today, since we're both social workers. So I'm picking a bunch of things that are social work related from various books. So I'm going to start from an excerpt from my novel, Joe the Salamander. And basically all you really need to know about this is nothing. Laura was telling her about a patient she was working with who had legally changed his name from Lindsay Nelson to Shades Creek. He preferred to be called Mr. Shady, a name which did him no favors within the community from a safety point of view, especially since he was scrawny and disheveled. Instead, Shades was often referred to as that dirty hippie in his hometown community. Shades also had not told anyone that he needed to be medicated until he had various episodes and then was sectioned to various hospitals. Life seemed to work against him, Laura had concluded. Shades had moved away from a wooded area in Alabama where, according to his story, they had an annual salamander festival. The psychiatric professionals in Alabama thought that he was obsessed with the festival and with salamanders in general, which triggered his mania around the time of their big event. Shades told Laura that he was tired of all the hospitalizations and the harassment in Alabama, and he'd moved far west to Phoenix and bought a costume shop in the downtown area. The shop, Barney's Costumes, did well around Halloween, but was fairly dormant the rest of the year. Shades Creek yearned to do something bigger than retail, something which included his love of salamanders. And so, ditching his meds for the first time since his move west, he'd come up with a brilliant idea, an annual salamander festival in Phoenix. His first step was to research the lovely critters who resided in Arizona. What Shades discovered was there was a certain breed of salamander found in the mountain region of Arizona, the barred tiger salamander. They were dark, covered with yellow spots, and they grew to be over 1 foot in length. They also were nocturnal creatures, so Shades decided that because they were illegal to purchase, he would camp out and capture a few on his own. He stayed up for a week straight, hunting them, and continued this practice until his home was packed with barred tiger salamanders. He brought some of the overflow into his shop, where the police thought there might be illegal trading going on. When they came to investigate, they found Shades, who introduced himself as Mr. Shady, naked from the waist up, his chest painted dark brown and black with spots of muddy yellow coloring. The responding officer proclaimed Shades good for the admission to the Good Samaritan Hospital, and that's where Laura met him. So what's he going to do once he's stable? His clinical team has encouraged him to start the festival. Huh? Yes, they think a constructive outcome for his troubling obsession would be therapeutic for him and could create a positive outcome for him and the community. Then he wouldn't feel harassed. Oh, I see. That's a good plan, Millie noted. They also suggested he no longer call himself Mr. Shady. Using Shades Creek is much safer. All right, I am now going to read from, as you can see, The Best of Timothy Gager, which came out last year. It's 20 years of my work, and it's poetry, flash fiction, novel excerpts, etc. So I'm going to actually read two poems from here. It happens in spring, and this is a poem about spring depression. We hear a lot about light deprivation depression in the winter, but spring depression is pretty out there too. It happens in spring when everything blooms, the green, the buds, the blossoms. Despite popular belief, thoughts blacker than the previous season. When snow falls in April, it's not all that backwards. It's the cruelty Eliot wrote about, rebirth, as a desolate emotional landscape. When the warmer weather activates, ignites a fervor for self-destruction. The added drain of collaborating contact, Durkheim directly depicted the potential disappointment as winter is overtaken by spring, light becoming dark. The dark heads to light. This is one called The Attenuation of Wide Range of Thoughts. Will the cables on the bridge snap? How far will the car drop before it hits the water? 1,000, 2 1,000. What will you think in that time of ailing? Life is so short. While driving on any large bridge, you think of that. When noticing blotches of rust on girders, the need for paint is just a signpost hiding other unheeded faults of structures like tunnels, roads. Mental notes affect relationships about sinkholes and dust storms, wildfires, cancers, and viruses. The people on the street that will rob you of your dignity. The guy in the tree when you were a child, in bed, terrified nightly, but he was never there. People went to work on 9/11, the tower's long arms stretched to heaven, before and after. No one knew things beyond our control can kill you. Then it's too late. Oh, it's too late to be too late. Sanity is the cables, steel and concrete, whose bridges falter under cars. The visions in your head, never stationary, solid rock. Shimanta is our torture. I'm now going to read from this one, which came out from Cervera Barber in 2009. And this is a book I've not really opened for a long time. The Short Marriage, this is a piece of flash fiction. The Short Marriage of a Bride and Groom. All I wanted to do was run my patent leather footwear. Sorry. All I wanted to do was run, but my patent leather footwear sank into the frosting. I was the guy wearing a tuxedo, smiling on top of the wedding cake. My wife joined me there on the happiest day of our lives. Things went wrong the second they sliced into the cake. Imagine being in an earthquake and having the world open up in front of you. Would you be able to run? You'd think someone might have prepared me, given me a talking to, or purchased me a set of snowshoes. My wife stood there, a smile painted on her face, her dress hard and unmoving. It was the sign of things to come, as our wedding night, when I tried to take that dress off, it would not budge. Talk about frustrating. For hours, I attempted to remove that dress. I'd been stiff all day, but now when it counted, I couldn't even get a decent hump out of it. She was sexless and plastic. That sets the stage for the beginning of our new life together. We spent a lot of time lying around. I realize now that we never spoke, not even left the house. After a few years, we became removed from one another. My friend told me he saw her on top of another cake. I often feel used and forgotten now. I've been left at the bottom of a utility drawer, which rarely gets opened. Maybe my dream girl will someday find me laying with the coupons, paper clips, 10 dozen pennies, and back up to the backup corkscrew and a refrigerator magnet from a closed auto repair shop. And when she does, I know what to do beyond the top of the cake. And I'm going to close with a very short section from my novel Grand Slams. And whoops, Grand Slams is up there. There it is. And Grand Slams is a novel that takes place at a Denny's restaurant. Well, basically, it's the Denny's restaurant that I worked at during one of my college breaks. So a lot of the characters are very, very true. And this is a character that worked in the dish room, Kayak Kenny. Without realizing it, Kenny is easily daunted. The fiber of his character is naive, almost childlike. Those who get to know him find him harmless, but those who do not often misconstrue him as creepy. Kayak Kenny was hit in the head with a canoe oar by his father, causing a head injury, but forced the schools to hold him back in third grade for 2 extra years. Then reluctantly, they advanced him every year after. As a 7-year-old before the accident, he loved going to the beach and watching boats. Now he watches Gilligan's Island reruns, but doesn't understand the most basic gags that the show promotes. His mother yells at him for being so stupid. Residents of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts have a funny way of distancing themselves from each other. Folks who live in New England notice this when they leave the area on vacation. They think how other people generally seem friendlier and warmer. Kayak Kenny also does not understand the social nuances of the Massachusetts residents or recognize why they act the way they do. Not being able to understand this is not Kenny's fault. Kayak Kenny hears Maura talk about the people here all the time because Maura lived outside of Massachusetts for many years. Kayak Kenny thinks people should be nice and that everyone is trying to be nice at all times. Kenny doesn't believe that people aren't nice. He interrupts people as laughing. He interprets people as laughing with him, not laughing at him. For him, simple is a good way to be, and a simple smile or hello is misinterpreted by Kayak Kenny as a show of interest for friendship, or, as in the case of the female, an interest in a relationship with him. Kenny thinks that if he saves up and buys a kayak, women would want to date him. It's innocent enough, a trip out in the water and a picnic. They would never want a 30-year-old who washes dishes and sometimes busses the tables at Grand Slams, but a man with a kayak is a different story. Kenny often gets tricked into washing dishes when he should have a turn walking up front as a busboy. Maloney and Geyser always tell him it's their turn, not Kenny's, and cite dates and times they recently had to wash the dishes. Truth is, it's never Kenny's turn to work up front, unless the old and slow Maurissimo is with him. But Keating and Trubiano, the bosses, never pair the two of them up on the same shift. Together, they are so slow at their jobs, they can't keep up with the restaurant. Runs out of dishes, silverware, coffee cups, and water glasses. And that's my reading for tonight. And thank you all, and thank you, Courtney and Linda and Peter and those that attended.
Thank you so much, Timothy. This was wonderful. I just want to invite folks to ask questions now. So you can feel free to unmute and ask aloud or put your question in the chat. I'm just going to change the view so we can see all our authors again. 1 second. So we have lots of complimentary comments in the chat. Thank yous and great stuff. Love that novel. Love the Flash. Such a moving poem. I think that was in response to one of Linda's. I'll start off the questions because I get to do that. My question goes back to Peter's reading and just the music and how you and Dan work together to create the vibe and the music. And have you read these poems together or these pieces together before, or is it sort of improvisation? How does that work?
I think, well, we used to have a band like 5 years ago, and he was like the lead guitarist. I was songwriter, and I sang and played guitar as well. So we kind of had that. We jabbed already, so it helped. But then I just asked him when I heard these books were going to be published that when I'm going to be doing readings, maybe if you could play a couple songs with me.
Yeah, and Pete gave me the 4 poems, and I read each one and just had an initial response to each one and just went with that and kind of came up with a theme for each one, and it's evolved. We've done this maybe 4 or 5 times now, and it's just kind of developed each time. And we listen to each other as we go.
That's awesome. Thank you. I heard a little of the house in New Orleans when he was reading the guillotine one.
There is a bit of that, yeah.
Yeah, that was fitting. Let's see, more compliments in the chat. No questions yet. Another question about Peter's music, which I think we covered. So I'll ask another one. It was just delightful, all these different locations, basically in all of your works. You know, from international locations to a lift, and I'm just wondering if you could talk about, all of you, any of you, surprising places or settings where you've found inspiration for your writing.
Well, Courtney, if I can offer a response. I once wrote a poem. I write these kind of, I guess some people call them slice of life poems, and, you know, sort of free verse, I guess you could call it. I wrote a poem about being in a car wash. So I was in my car, I was getting, you know, going through the, you know, all the strings and everything, the water and the foam and the suds. And it's such a powerful sonic experience, you know, and just being in you know, you're sort of being pulled. And I just found that grist for a poem. And I was the music I was listening to, this wonderful King Sunny Ade, you know, this sort of very happy, sort of bouncy, like Afro pop. And I was in such a good mood. I was really happy that day. And I just wrote a poem about being in the car wash, you know. And another time I wrote a poem about shopping for toilet seats. My friend was at a poetry reading. My friend, she's a wonderful poet, and she was, you know, I just, you know, when you need to buy a toilet seat, you need to, you know, you can't wait on those things. So I felt bad, you know, I was at Home Depot shopping for a toilet seat, and my friend, who's a wonderful poet, I was reading her poetry. So anything, you can write a poem about anything, anywhere, as far as I'm concerned. So
Great answer.
yeah.
So Joe the Salamander takes place in Arizona in the 1990s, and I've had to do research, and doing research is almost more fun. It's a fun piece of the puzzle versus like actually being there and writing about it. So while I was doing research about 90s in Arizona, I found this place called Legend City, which was an amusement park in downtown Arizona, right by Phoenix, and it ended up closing because Phoenix is so damn hot, and they didn't have anything set up. It was a Wild West type of thing. So I made one of my characters, I made Joe's father, employed there. All right, so in the section I wrote about Shades Creek, there's actually a salamander festival in Alabama. So I needed him, I needed the salamander connection with Joe, and I needed the costume shop. But what I forgot was, when I researched it, the Alabama Salamander Festival takes place in Shades Creek, and that's how I originally got his name. So after the book was out, I was like, Shades Creek has the Salamander Festival in Arizona. I wonder if there's a T-shirt for the Shades Creek, the town Salamander Festival. So I bought it.
That's awesome.
And that says
nice.
Friends of Shades Creek Salamander Festival.
Amazing. Thank you. One more, well, maybe two more questions. And if you have any questions for each other, please feel free to jump in. But,
yeah, Linda, why did you read so short? I was enjoying your work.
That's my question. You know, I was going to read another point. I wasn't sure, you know, I knew I'd be reading poetry and, you know, fiction. I knew you'd be reading your fiction, and that generally takes more. So I No, I don't know. I'll read more some other time, you know.
Well, you know what they say about readings, leave them wanting more. So you did
It,
that.
yes, yeah. I
You
felt like
definitely
being conservative tonight. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I definitely will. I think I will share out where everyone can find more, Peter and Timothy and Linda, after the program. So a couple of you are social workers, and I feel like Pete maybe has the vibe of a social worker sometimes as well. But all these observations of people, and I'm just wondering, I don't know really what my question is, but how does writing help you survive your vocation, your other vocation?
Pete, do you want to tackle that one? I mean, I could
I mean,
talk.
think
I could be a little
well-
long-winded. I don't want to,
I think like for you, both of you,
bloviate here, you know.
yeah, you're both social workers, so you're doing something like
Yeah.
right?
So
But I'm
people
like,
people think, yeah, people think that like I put all my energy into social work and I'm exhausted. Oh, the weight of other people's problems. But my job isn't that way at all. Like I
Oh,
don't
really?
feel that way. I can help as much as I can help, and it's their stuff, not my stuff. It's good compartmentalized. So
Yeah.
writing is sort of, I mean, they're totally different. One doesn't necessarily help or hurt the other, but I do get some good subject matter. So.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I mean, I just to sort of piggyback on what Tim said. You know, I think all three of us, we have a strong sense of social justice, and that you can feel that in our work. And I think, and as I was saying to Tim earlier today, I think, you know, anytime I write, I'm seeing the world through the lens of social work. You know, and you're trying to heal, and you're trying to help support people and tap into their strengths, you know, so they can solve problems. But you see, you know, the world is, I don't know what I'm saying. But yeah, definitely. I feel like, you know, that influences my voice as a writer, you know, being a social worker. Absolutely. 100%.
think like you both have something you're doing, like I was saying, like good work, you know, like I'm kind of just like maintaining a database. It's kind of like it's all right. It's going to be intense. It's interesting enough, but it's not like I don't feel like I'm like helping people out too much. Maybe helping knowledge generate a little bit, but I don't know. But I do see a lot of like axes fall, like on a daily basis in a big corporation, and I kind of that part of that comes out. I think in my one of my short stories is called "A New Employee," about someone introduces a new algorithm which actually physically comes to life and tosses people out the door. And so yeah, I guess that informs a lot of what I write. And then I think it helps to just get away from all of that kind of work and then just kind of go in your corner and then find a typewriter and just write about other aspects of life, for me at least.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat. You're all such great poets. Do you prefer poetry over other types of writing? For anyone?
Today, no. Tomorrow, maybe yes. It's kind of like your children, you know. I mean, of course, you know. It just depends on the day. Like if when I'm writing a novel, I'm not doing any other types of writing, so I lock in, and so that's where that's at. But like, you know, preference. I really don't have any preference. Like I really love all the forms.
I'm a recovering English major, and I wish it's terrible, but I used to love reading fiction, and I don't know, I got inoculated against it. When I was a student, and I don't know what, I wish it would come back. I used to really love reading fiction, but I just don't. I read poetry or memoir, letters. You know, that's really what I'm drawn to. And I think keep saying, oh, someday I want to, you know, read fiction again, but I lost my taste for it years and years ago. But I enjoy hearing it. You know, like tonight, you know, Pete and Tim, your stories. I was like, God, you know, I should read more. You know, but I don't know. It's
Pete's
just
got a new
on my
book you
night
can pick up.
table. It's yeah. What?
Pete's got a new book you can pick up if you want to start reading fiction again. It's
I
just
know,
out.
I know. I mean, I know. I have it. I think he gave me a copy of it, but I'm just that's just me, you know.
For me, I think I'm like the opposite of you, Linda. In one sense, I agree with Timothy. Like, it depends what day it is, what you're writing, like whatever comes out, basically for me. Unless you're working on like a novel or something like that. But I think for reading, I don't really. I sometimes I get into reading poetry, but it's kind of like once in a blue moon. I like to hear it more. I feel like it's an oral tradition more than like fiction or nonfiction, of course. So I kind of stick to reading fiction or nonfiction, but occasionally I'll hear of a new poet and then I'll be like, I'll pick it up. Sometimes it will fall flat on me, even if I, like I hear them on the radio or something. But other times, like Friends, right? For instance, he blew me away when he read his voice.
Love
It
Friends,
just
right.
floored me. And then just reading it also floored me. So it's like, I don't know. That's kind of a rarity. But
Thank you. One question I have inspired by a nice comment. Let me find it from Deborah, who said, "What a lovely respite during this holiday week. Thank you to you all." And that just made me think a lot of, there was a theme of seasons in all of your writing. And I'm just wondering if you wanted to comment on like this season and your process, or, how your writing or your practice changes over the year.
They say. You know what? The holidays are weird because it's like on the weekend I might still be writing, but on a holiday I'm not. It almost feels like there's this void during that particular day, like Thanksgiving Day or Christmas Day or whatever holidays. I don't think I've really ever written like a Thanksgiving theme or a Christmas theme. They come in, but it's not during the actual season. Like, I don't have to write about bad weather because there's bad weather outside my window. So like it's all, it's all like good and fun stuff. I mean, the holidays are such great open canvases. And I don't know if people watch The Bear, but just having the show on Hulu, just having that Christmas scene with the mother being out there, that had to be on Christmas. It couldn't be any other day. So like, you use it kind of as a functional tool.
Thanks. Anybody else? I guess it just feels so packed and harried to me, and I feel like you all take sort of an opposite view and really dive in and observe at a different scale, or you have that skill at least, and I would love to have that skill at this moment. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you can look at a puddle of water and a whole story comes at you, and other days you could experience the aurora borealis and just draw a blank. So you never know.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you all again for doing this. This has been wonderful. Thanks to Peter for organizing everyone. And I will send out the recording to everyone here and who signed up to attend but couldn't make it, as well as where to find everyone's publications and writing. And thank you again. And
Thank
everybody
you.
have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
thanks.
Good night. Have a nice Thanksgiving,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Appreciate it, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.